Good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Curtis, and I have the honor today of leading a discussion of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and its potential impact on Africa. I'm joined by my four colleagues, Sean from Revix, Brenda, who has a significant experience in risk and process management, which will have a big impact on how we work in the automated world, Olumbunmi from Nigeria, who works in the banking sector, as well as Ian Putter, another person in the banking sector who works in the world of blockchain and the metaverse, something we've all heard has immense value if you have something to sell. So thank you very much, colleagues, for joining me. I'd just like to paint the picture where the Fourth Industrial Revolution is a topic of discussion globally. It's been in the World Economic Forum for the last 10 years. It's been an issue that the United Nations has been talking about again for the last 10 years. And one of the reasons why it's coming up hot in the African continent these days is because the 5G radio frequency spectrum has recently been released across Africa. With that 5G radio frequency spectrum comes the potential for you to have connectivity to the internet at 100 megabits per second on your mobile phone. That's absolutely fantastic, but how many people in Africa have that capability, have that right? According to recent statistics, only 18% of those who live in Africa have access to the internet at home. A mobile phone is the great access technology. But how are we going to leverage that as a technology in Africa so that it benefits Africa? And what else do we need to do? So these are the topics I'm going to be asking my colleagues to discuss about, and I will be interjecting, asking some questions during the process. And please do type in your questions in the comments bar, and I will try and answer them either during the session or afterwards. Right, thank you very much. Sean, I can accuse you of being somebody who's only good at moving money around. All moving money around does is improve efficiency. It doesn't necessarily bring increased value to a country or to an economy. How does moving money around in the Fourth Industrial Revolution improve things for Africa?
So I think hey Peter, and hey colleagues, I think the Fourth Industrial Revolution is really about efficiency ultimately, right? I mean, if you're looking at automation, if you're looking at robotics, if you're looking at blockchain, I mean, all of these things are improvements on the current systems. And I think a lot of people sort of look at, let's just say, AI or robotics, and they go, oh gosh, like this new technology is coming in, it's looking to replace human capital, everyone's jobs are at risk. And yeah, I think to a certain degree, that's the truth. But at the same time, I don't think that people are going to be replaced as much as sort of displaced and moved into new positions going forward. And I think that's the interesting opportunity here, right? Because I mean, sure, Revix plays in the sort of crypto space. We allow people to buy cryptocurrency bundles. We allow people to send and receive cryptocurrency. We really do believe that blockchain and crypto is going to be a big part of the future of finance and the future of moving value around. And I suppose the future as well of sort of attributing value through tokens and all the rest. But there's far more out there. And, you know, we spoke about this just before we got onto this, Peter, that the industrial revolution and the Fourth Industrial Revolution in particular is really just about everything. It's about the future. And that's the exciting part of all of this. So if moving money around is, you know, going to improve the way that somebody's able to access, say, some educational channel, or the way that they're able to engage with content, then, you know, of course, I think that the financial infrastructure and general infrastructure, of course, is a very important component of that. I can keep speaking for a while, but, you know, I can hand it back to you, Peter. Maybe one of the colleagues have something else to say.
So you've mentioned this rather nebulous concept called blockchain. I don't know what it means. How many other people know what it means? Ian, you're involved in this. Olumbunmi, you're involved in this in Nigeria. What is blockchain? And more importantly, maybe I don't have to know about it, but blockchain might be of benefit to those who really need access to blockchain for what it does. What is it? Who can benefit from it?
All right. So, okay, blockchain is a technology that has that speaks about a digital ledger that is immutable, and you know, it is distributed across different nodes, which are usually called like computers. So it has a distributed network, And there are several use cases of blockchain technology away from crypto, which Ian has spoken of, Sean has spoken about. Apart from crypto, you can use blockchain technology for logistics. It can be used basically for anything that has to do with data. So in simple terms, the block and the chain put together, the block contains data, it contains information, which are all changed together. And what this gives you is that security. It protects your data, it protects your information. It also makes information transparent. And that is why it is easily applied towards cryptocurrency. Away from that, like I mentioned, you can use it to store data, to store information that can be made public. So for example, bring it to Africa. You have land records that is solely, the government is solely in charge of it. Probably just one official of the government has access to all the land records information, which is not supposed to be. This allows for corruption, you know. So applying blockchain technology to something like that allows it to be open. However, access is restricted. So everybody knows who owns what, everybody knows who has what, everybody knows what the government has allocated to who. And this helps a lot with transparency. I think that's just an example of how much blockchain technology can bring to Africa, just an instance.
So what you've outlined a very specific example where blockchain can be used to improve government services.
Yes.
Ian, what's your view of the use of blockchain, not only within financial services, but how can blockchain be used to improve the economic opportunities of somebody in Malawi?
I think
what
we spoke about earlier was the digital infrastructure compared to physical infrastructure. So I'm just going to not go further with the definition, just to support the view that you've got a ledger that's totally different from ledgers today, where you've got multiple ledgers that's private and lots of people working around on it. So the fact that you've got this transparent ledger enables brand new use cases like identity as a key example of enabling communities to access ecosystems. Today in Africa, a lot of people are excluded because they don't have identity or proof of identity, if I can mention it that way. And blockchain can provide that transparent view where people's privacy can be protected, even though it's a transparent ledger, but it can enable lots of communities to access platforms and ecosystems, protecting their dignity. And if you think about social or blockchain for good, it's to provide food to people that it was intended for. The big thing when you think about a blockchain, it integrates a lot of the processes that we've got today through smart contracts. So today, to Sean's point earlier, you're not going to need humans to track and trace food packages that was intended for Ian Patta in South Africa, that was provided by donors. If you put that on a blockchain, I can use my thumbprint or my biometrics to go and collect my food from a vending machine. I'm just giving a very high level example. And that prevents a lot of people taking money that had to go for food to start businesses and logistics companies. So historically, the World Health Organization, before they used blockchain, out of hundreds of millions that was distributed to Africa, only a few $1 million of food actually reached the intended recipients. When they started moving those to a governed transparent ledger, which is a blockchain, the impact was almost 99% of the intended donor funds went to people in a way where they could go and collect the food with dignity. If you hand that function over to people or centralized functions, some of the food packages were sold for $1 or $2 and the people don't have money, if it makes sense to you. So I think identity, food, housing, earlier, a lot of properties, we're building houses in Namibia through a partnership with NASA and MIT. There's a team here working with them, and they're growing mushrooms to provide food to people. So all those mushrooms are tracked on a blockchain to make sure it's healthy and that it's, if you make a protein shake from that mushrooms, it's got all the proteins and that could feed a lot of people across Africa. But the same mushrooms are grown to create bricks to build houses. There's a nice article about it on the Wall Street Journal. Those bricks just you can't light them. So they can't catch fire. So it's very safe. And Standard Bank now linked to that an initiative that's called Buy a Brick. So if we take Revix, for instance, my example earlier, and we put those Buy a Brick tokens on that platform, people across the world can now buy bricks. You can see you bought this brick, and those bricks can be used to build houses for the intended communities. So I just wanted to use a more practical example. And that, by the way, is not possible. It is possible on traditional legacy systems. But the maintenance and the people needed to do what a blockchain does in this case is a lot more expensive. So the efficiency with which these systems are run on a blockchain enables more of the donor money to reach the intended recipients or beneficiaries. I hope what I said made sense.
So we've spoken about the importance of blockchain, efficiency of government services, and how it can make the world transparent for everybody who lives in Africa, which is an absolutely necessary function. Now, to use the blockchain the way you're referring to it, we need connectivity. How do we get it? If, as I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, around 18% of people in Africa have internet at home. How do we get internet throughout Africa, and what do we need in place? Who's going to take that one?
I'll jump at that one. And then Brenda, maybe you want to jump in straight afterwards. So, and look, not to go too deep here, but ultimately you need to attract business, right? You need to stop the brain drain from leaving Africa and going to, the US or going to the Middle East or going to Europe. And I think that comes down to regulatory policies and governments and various regulatory bodies being far more pro-business than what they've been. I don't think there's many African countries that have done that exceptionally well. I mean, if you start looking at, let's say, the EU, if you start looking now more recently at the Middle East, there's very attractive incentives. I mean, us as Revix, we're actually looking at this now in terms of our expansion opportunities. And the regulatory frameworks are more advanced. So there's people in government that have put very well educated and smart people in positions to build regulatory frameworks that attract business, that provide incentives, tax breaks, and a whole bunch of other sort of necessary foundational requirements. And again, incentives really to set up in that particular jurisdiction. I think Africa's got a huge opportunity to set up the same sort of structures. And that then should bring in business. Business should then bring in people. And I think that becomes this pretty awesome and ultimately for the nation and for the entire continent, the self-fulfilling cycle of growth and opportunity, job growth, et cetera, et cetera.
Brenda?
Yeah. What a great question, and I like how Sean has explained it, because when you think about it, at the very center of economics is human behavior. It is how we react or how we react to our needs and our demands. And what does that behavior or that reaction translate into? We mentioned the fact that we need infrastructure to be able to leverage of the potential that this, exponential technology is bringing in. But we need policy makers, we need governance that puts the technology science advancement at the forefront of their cardinal pillars and not put politics at the forefront of everything. If they understand that, they start to understand what are the needs in these different environments and how do they ensure that in their policies, in the regulatory framework, as Sean alluded to, we ensure that there is service delivery, there is infrastructure that enables that brain drain to stop, that creates an environment where when we deploy this technology as we need it, the environment is conducive for that. We need to start, not just bringing technology without understanding technology. You cannot process drive technology. It's not the other way around. We need to understand first, what are the needs in our environment? We need to understand how are we going to meet those needs. And once we understand that, we can say, these are the solutions. that we're going to need. We're not just going to, adopt things that are done in other areas because we think it is fantastic. So I think it starts with us understanding the needs in our own environment and saying, how do we leverage off what we have or what's happening outside to ensure that, it is fit for purpose in our particular environments.
Well, Bunmi, can I ask you the question where if we've got the processes in place, fine, but what is it that we need? If we need to understand our use cases, what are the use cases that we need in place?
So I believe that you're asking about infrastructure. That's improvement of infrastructure on the African continent.
Correct.
All right, yes. I spoke about transparency, what blockchain brings. I don't know why I keep going back to blockchain, but I think blockchain is very, very useful. It's a very, very useful use case. And like I would always say, blockchain is going to help us leapfrog a lot of continents because it is specifically made for the African continent. We have so many problems that blockchain is ready and willing to solve. And bringing blockchain to the government, seeing like Ian mentioned before, you are able to now take out the people. You're able to take out the people problem from the general spending. Now is based on process. So when these processes are put in place, they are automated. So I know that once you have $1 million in Naira, whatever currency, this money is going to this set of people, this money is going to this set of things to be done. And the blockchain covers it to the later. It is transparent. Everybody can see what is being done on the blockchain network. Everybody can see what is being done on the ledger. So this helps a lot. Applying this to government spending across board helps a lot with transparency. And by the time every official knows that you can't be corrupt, you can't spend what is not on what you are not supposed to, you begin to sit up. And those positions become less juicy. Because I think that the reason why we are currently where we are is because government is pretty expensive. People get attracted into getting to government because they know that they can misappropriate funds, they can do as they like with whatever funds we have. So putting some of all these processes in place make us have the right set of people go into government, people with purpose, people with actual innovation, people with innovative ideas are the ones that get into seat like that. And by the time you have this, it's a cycle. Everything just begins to improve. By the time you have an honest person with an honest process, with a transparent process in charge of things begin to improve thereon. Then we can start speaking about bringing in investments and generally improving the health of the continent.
So you seem to be agreeing with Sean there, but one of the things I would like to add to this discussion is that Africa is resource poor, not in minerals, but in dollars and cents. We need connectivity now so that we can connect to the fourth industrial revolution. But the states don't have the money. Even if everything was transparent, it's not as if every country's government has a strong enough budget to go and put Wi-Fi everywhere. How do we overcome that matter? What needs to be done there? How does the private sector come in? Can the two work together? Do you believe it's possible?
I'd like to take that one. I completely understand, Peter. I think I completely agree, actually. I think in the fourth industrial revolution, key to ensuring that these things happen is collaboration. We have seen so many benefits of different stakeholders coming together in order to achieve so many things. I mean, we live in a world where there is the world of IoT. We know how connectivity, if we just think about the past 3 years of COVID, where we couldn't do a lot, but the connectivity that we had allowed us to transfer knowledge to areas that are far from where we are, get experiences from people that have done things that we haven't had experience in, and we have grown and learned from all of that. And we are in a position where we can transfer that knowledge either through academia to the young ones, or into our business and starting to see the fruits of that. So I think collaboration between private organization, public organization, academia, and even entrepreneurs sitting in the communities, because those are the people that understand the realities in those situation or in those settings. And by them understanding those realities means they can easily identify the issues that they have. Then that's when we bring the experts to be able to help them to then say, if this is an issue, what can be the solution to it? And then in working together, it ensures that you don't wait to deploy these programs, and at the end, you want to start teaching people. People become part of the process. And if it is operationalized from the word go, then people start to buy into this, and people start to own it. And then this way the sustainability comes into place, because they feel like they are part of the process. So from where I'm sitting and the work that we do with the organization that I'm in with TEFs, where we go and develop skills and upskill and reskill entrepreneurs and young futurists, is about exactly that, helping each other and bringing different ideas together in order to find solutions that are beneficial that are mutually beneficial for all the parties that are involved.
You've said a very interesting phrase, and I think it's a very important phrase, is that the fourth industrial revolution is a collaborative state, no longer a scenario where one party regulates the other and private business must just do what government says. From what I hear, what you're saying is we can help each other, and only if we work together will we succeed. Correct. Does that make sense?
Correct. That's exactly that. Silo mentality doesn't work anymore. It is only when we hold each other's hand that we can leapfrog. Yes, you can continue by yourself, but you're not going to get too far, not in this day and age.
Ian, do you have a view on that and how possibly working together can make a big difference? For example, with Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I, for me personally, don't underestimate the power of partnerships and venture capital startups and venture capital funds. I know the Swiss government is funding 100 blockchain startups in Africa over the next 4 years, given the success that they've had in Crypto Valley. And they're partnering with universities and lots of companies, Revix, lots of companies are part of the CVVC family. So is Standard Bank and companies like Polygon and other big crypto or blockchain companies that's doing education across Africa and looking at facilitating internet. One of the companies that we saw is providing Wi-Fi to communities, and they're building, I'm not going to mention the countries where they're building those towers, but they've got a reach of about 50 kilometers, very cheap. And then to the point that Brenda made, it's partnerships, not only between governments and the private sector, but also fintechs and new startups. A big thing that we've seen through CVVC is that innovation in Africa happens out of necessity. And if you look at the funding and the growth of funding that's flowing into crypto and blockchain fintechs in Africa, to name a few, there's also a lot of artificial intelligence, IoT and other fintechs that we've been exposed to across fields, not only in money, but also in the medical environment, where they are addressing the foundational requirements to enable communities to get access to the new emerging technologies and use cases that blockchain, AI, and all the other emerging technologies, not emerging actually more, it's now accepted, it's not new. And the use cases in Africa is actually fantastic. I attended the Africa Startup Awards, which is another venture external from other countries that's funding startups across Africa. And when I look at the use cases, to Brenda's point earlier as well, it's use cases that uses this technology to solve real on-the-ground problems. But the key building blocks that's required over time, and we as a bank are also participating in some of these, is the identity, as I mentioned, and the Wi-Fi, the infrastructure. Because you can't issue any digital money or tokens or support if people don't have access to technology. And that's where the partnerships are becoming vital. And the other point that I want to raise as a final point is, in a lot of the use cases as a continent, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of these use cases that's already live globally. And the foundations that's actually created them are sharing those rails and infrastructure with us as a continent.
So one of the biggest issues behind access to the internet is handsets or computers. But more basic than that is power, secure sources of power. Without a secure source of power, this call wouldn't happen. The conference wouldn't happen. How do we make sure that those in northern Nigeria can participate in a conference such as this? How do we use the various technologies that we have to fund new sources of power? How do we work together with states to do that? Do we need to work with states to solve the power problem? Or can we use Fourth Industrial Revolution tools to do so?
I think Sean and Brenda, and we all mentioned earlier that we remember that energy, renewable energy, governance, all those things are critical. But I've realized, and the other committee, the other panel members can correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you want to provide Wi-Fi and infrastructure, you're always going to need regulatory approval in some sort. You're not going to be able to function as an island, which I would love to do in a lot of instances. But coming from a bank, I recognize that regulation is crucial, because if anything that's powerful ends up in the wrong hands, you're not going to get the benefits or the accessibility. If you think about public finance, if you think about economists, why do you have a state? A state's there to provide goods to people that no one else will. So it's actually a service that's provided to the public based on taxes that they pay, right? And I think the important thing, if you look at the infrastructure that's not there, you can say that there's a big failure on the side of governments because they don't give access to all. A lot of people complain about banks not banking a lot of people. But similarly, governments don't govern a lot of people, given the money. So the efficiencies are terrible. Sorry, and lots of governments are probably going to hate me for this. But the bottom line is, if you can get back to that collaboration between private, public, and as I said, the innovation community, you will be able to build infrastructure to people that really need it.
So let me shift the discussion a little bit. We've got the Fourth Industrial Revolution doesn't only cover the services side. It changes everything. It has an impact in agriculture. It's definitely changing manufacturing with regards to automation. It's changing mining completely. How do we as Africa look into the Fourth Industrial Revolution? And Sean, one of the big issues that we have here is fear of change. The issue of being reallocated as a human being when you're 45 to have to go and learn a new skill is daunting. If you've been growing potatoes in the same way for the last 20 years, and now this new technology arrives, it's a daunting exercise. The rest of the world is dealing with this daunting concern of bus drivers being replaced by automated vehicles and having to find something for people to do. Africa is in the same position. How do we respond to this?
So this will be quite an unpopular, I suppose, view. But ultimately, you've got two choices here, right? You either embrace innovation in all of its forms, right? So that includes taking on the latest technology, whether that is agri-tech whether that is some other sort of automation and robotics tech that gets introduced, and you look to sort of work at the bleeding edge of innovation, and from a regulatory standpoint, as well as sort of from a like in-person or sort of in labor perspective, actually take on that innovation and you go with it. Or you don't do that, and all of a sudden you become less efficient and more expensive as a country, and over time your population doesn't benefit. I mean, I know it's not quite as simple as that, but I really do believe that, again, it comes back to regulation. I mean, I think we've seen this firsthand sort of building Revix over the years. It's that a regulatory framework that is conducive to doing business, and a regulatory framework that allows you to actually engage with regulators and to work with regulators, it allows you to lean into that jurisdiction. You hire people in that specific area. And I think if you're looking at sort of what you're talking about, which is robotics, if you're talking about the agri-tech, actual improvements in the way that we do everything, that requires frameworks to promote that and to encourage that. So you can either take, and I'm kind of going back to the same point, you can take the approach of saying, hey, listen, we don't want to change anything. We're just going to continue doing the same thing. But I don't think that ends in a good position for that country. I think embracing innovation and I suppose helping the people that are being impacted by upskilling them, right? I mean, at one point in time, if you had, somebody that was plowing fields and then you went along and you introduced a tractor, perhaps having a subsidy system in place or something along the lines that could allow that person then to use, and this is a way like totally oversimplified example, but having somebody that could then use a tractor, all of a sudden they become more efficient. And perhaps there's a loan scheme that could be implemented then that could, work in that sort of a structure. So I think that's sort of an approach to embracing innovation and supporting the people that are in the positions that are going to be impacted and being empathetic to those people. I think that's the way that we're going to address this going forward.
Well, Ubunmi, you work in a country, live in a country that is what the most densely populated, is also the largest population in Africa. And you run the scale of incomes that go from pure subsistence farming for decades to multimillionaires. How are these disruptions going to affect your environment?
Yes, so definitely they are going to affect both positively and maybe a bit negatively. And I remember you spoke about a 45-year-old subsistence farmer having to embrace this type of technologies. And I would say that for every industrial revolution that there has been need for it at the time. Man has needed that evolution, that revolution to be able to go to the next level. And this is where we are now. So I'm going to come from the point of upskilling. It is very, very key for you to educate your citizens, to educate people about everything that they stand to gain when they embrace this technology. It's not just about telling them to embrace a particular technology because they just have to, like that's where the world is going to. You have to tell them what they stand to gain. So as a farmer, if I bring in advanced tech to your subsistence farming, it helps you with yield. Your yield is improved. By bringing blockchain technology, your production, you know exactly where it ends up. There's a link, everything is transparent enough for you to see that whatever cocoa that you're planting in your farm is ending up in a cadbury shop somewhere in New York, somewhere in Holland. So it is very, very important for us to explain these things first. We have to sit down, and that's where private and government also need to come in. We all have to sit down and say, oh, yes, let's go educate somebody, a northern Nigerian farmer, about the need, for you to accept this technology because it helps you with point A, point B, point C. It practically takes you to the next level. It makes your life easier. It helps you with your yield. And I think this applies across board. Before you can say that you want to give people certain technologies to be able to improve themselves, you have to tell them how the technology in turn improves them. So upskilling is very, very key. Improving on digital skills, education, very important. And that is most of the things that I do. I run a startup called Banks and Blockchain. And what we do is just educate financial institutions and everybody that is affected by the traditional financial system in Nigeria about the use cases of blockchain technology, how it's going to help them, how blockchain is able to help you, is going to help you save billions of dollars in cross-border payment fees. So rather than continue with your traditional financial system, just have blockchain technology, use blockchain technology to be able to help you improve this. So education has helped. I mean, I've done that for thousands of people, and it has helped people. You know, you have to, if you are going to migrate people from where they are to where they are supposed to be, you have to educate them, you have to upskill them, you have to let them understand what they stand to gain where they are going to.
Ian, do you have a view? The impact of the shift
Sorry,
that the fourth industrial revolution is bringing in. It's shifting the world. And one of the biggest concerns we need to be aware of is, what is that impact? As Brenda was saying earlier, if we don't understand our needs now and what our wants are now, we bring in a new technology. Sean was saying we need to keep up with it so that we are globally competitive. Great, let's do that. But what about what is needed? What Olumbunmi was saying was that we need to tell everybody about it. Otherwise, they will be left behind. How do we do that?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk based on our experience. We started an initiative across Africa, which we call Blockchain Research Institute Africa. And what we're doing there is what we call syndicated research. So what that means is we're providing free blockchain education, but we're identifying through communities across Africa needs. So we're trying to match the needs, to a point Brenda made earlier, to the capabilities of what blockchain, AI, and the fourth industrial revolution can bring. So in essence, we're doing that research with very big global corporates, but not using examples of use cases that's used in Europe, the US, or anywhere else. We're looking at what the needs are in Africa. And then the research that we produce at the end of the day is freely available, but it's the research with a difference. It's got the educational components, but also how do you execute and implement the research that we've done to enable communities. And then another key component for any blockchain or emerging technology to really function well, you need community participation. So the understanding of the benefits of what has been produced is essential to facilitate wide adoption and participation. So that's my view. So I agree with everybody. And I think that's the groundwork that we're doing at the moment. Because the thing is, delivering things for the sake of delivering it, people might not adopt it. Adoption is still a big issue if you give people new things. Just to give you an example, if you look at payments over the last, how many, I don't know, decades, fiat currency, physical cash, has always been used. Even when credit cards and all these new digital payment forms were introduced, people always fall back on fiat currency. And that's, if you want to provide anything to people, it must be simple, accessible, and people must be enticed to use it. And I think that's one thing that we didn't talk about a lot when we look at more emerging technologies and the metaverse, for instance. Built in, and even in Sean's business, there's incentivization mechanisms. Earn to learn to earn, whatever way you want to put it, that's essential to get people. There's great examples globally where people can generate $3 a day or $2 a day by doing some things on ecosystems, right? That's essential. But for a lot of people, that $2 a day is the only income they're making. And I think that's the kind of thinking that we've got to introduce in all the solutions if we want real adoption by communities in Africa, is how do you incentivize communities to participate, but also incentivize to do things in the right way to ensure governance.
So if I'm a small manufacturing business in Tanzania, my capital equipment is what I have. I make money, but I don't make enough money to replace it. Where does the fourth industrial revolution leave me? Do I have the benefit of access to new markets, or do I have the benefits of new technologies that they're there, but I can't afford to use them? How does the fourth industrial revolution affect those operating in the real economy?
Is there anyone that wants to take it? Or if I can position it. So firstly, from my perspective, what that small manufacturing company needs is the ability to, if you look at what they're manufacturing actually, if they've got a product and they're so small and the equipment only allow them to distribute to the local market or the immediate environment, if it makes sense to you. The fourth industrial revolution could potentially enable that manufacturer to get education, to understand how to refine their project. So I'm going to start with education first, by giving them access to other manufacturers and similar production lines globally, looking at know-how and partnerships as enabled through the fourth industrial revolution, and then also looking at efficiencies in how they track and trace their value chains. There's lots of inefficiencies in processes, accounting, back office operations, ordering, procurement. All those can be integrated in a very simple process that brings transparency to that business. And then payments, which we spoke about earlier. Today, many years ago, people didn't think mobile phones are going to be where we're going to do our banking. Even a few years ago, you had to buy a GPS device that you put in your car, like a Garmin. And today, everything is embedded in this smartphone. For those manufacturers, what's possible is to access a lot of customers as well and make their products available wider. And that is possible if they can accept and make cross-border payments, for instance, to get better equipment that's a lot cheaper, maybe in other markets, and then simultaneously have the ability to receive money from customers where their products could be sent to from a logistical perspective. So I know I'm saying it at a very high level, but if you take time and you assess the capabilities that this new emerging technologies bring, it could facilitate a much more efficient connectivity at all levels to that manufacturer.
So then let me ask the question, when did the fourth industrial revolution really start? Because growing my market is not necessarily living in the same town. It's by having a website. I could have done this in the 80s. But to do that in the 80s, I needed to be connected.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes back to that connection problem.
It will always go back to the connection problem. And I think that's why what we said earlier is the assessments that needs to be done. And let me give another angle to this as well, Peter, is that a lot of the fintechs that I'm speaking to are very keen to participate in those areas that we talk about, where there's no connectivity. And they are now thinking for the first time, or not the first time, they are thinking of ingenious ways to provide that or resolve that connectivity problem. And the syndicated research we're doing at Standard Bank and the venture capital funding companies that we're working with, I'm not using Standard Bank as the be-all and end-all. There's lots of companies that is participating here. I just don't want to mention all the companies. But the partnerships that's starting to drive Africa's growth is focusing on these foundational components. And there are fintechs, and there's funding to support that. It's always going to come back to the final point of regulatory approval. But there's also partnerships now with governments. And if you look at 6 African countries that's very keen on emerging technologies, they are really pushing the boundaries with the regulators on moving crypto, digital assets, and other use cases on blockchain forward. And I think once those are proven, there's a lot that's proven already. There's not a lot that needs to be proven. But I think as these successes are being realized, you will see that there's more mass adoption across the continent. I also think a fantastic opportunity for Africa, and we're all looking at that, and fintechs, is the Intercontinental Africa Free Trade Agreement. Legacy technologies, blockchain can track and trace soft commodities, products that are moving cross-border, customs, rules, and then exchanges of prices to make these soft commodity prices more visible to lots of people, that you can see corn that moves from South Africa to Malawi, to Egypt, to Nigeria, all are, if you convert it from an exchange rate perspective, are actually the same. There's not people that's manipulating the prices. That kind of use cases is where the continent can collaborate. So I think there's opportunities at a continental level, and then there's local opportunities as well. And all these are being looked at. And I think the partnerships and the effort and the funding that's coming from the rest of the world and the support from the regulators is a lot better than what I mean, I'm always amazed when I talk to some of the governments and some of the fintechs and the startup. There's a positive energy to make a difference.
So if I could sum it up, I could sum it up by saying the fourth industrial revolution is about a collaborative state, all the stakeholders working together faster than ever before. And if we don't do it, we won't solve the connectivity problem. And if we don't solve the connectivity problem, we get left behind. Again, is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think understanding that we are not at the mercy of technology, we can drive the agenda based on the needs that we have in the continent. And also, I mean, we've got a massive opportunity. Africa is the youngest continent in the whole world. We have the biggest population of young people that are tech savvy, that are technocrats, that are excited about where we are. So we need to use that opportunity to try to start building new skills, reskilling people, and ensuring that all of this is done for the development and the benefit of our community. So I think if we start at that young age and start to educate these ones and start to teach them critical skills so that they can be forward thinkers, they can really start to help the policy makers to not just build laws that are going to take away the opportunities, but laws that are enablers for us to be able to leapfrog Africa to the future that we want for ourselves. So I think it shouldn't be about compliance to the laws that are here. It should be about commitment to the development of our continent. And we can do all of this if we all work together towards similar goals that will better our lives.
Brenda, thank you very much. I think you've summed up our entire debate in one go. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for participating in today's discussion. For all of those who are online, please do bomb us with some questions. Hopefully we can give you the best answers. And if you're from government, I hope you're listening. If you're from the private sector, I hope we can give you some opportunity to assist you either to make more money or to resolve problems that you are currently facing. Thank you very much, guys. And let's see what happens over the next 6 months and see if we need to get back again next year and see what progress we've made.